There are many people in this world who trust in their chariots, their swords, their bows and arrows, and their pharaoh for protection from the world when it goes crazy. I'm here to tell you the fact that if you do not live in a community or society where you have a buffer of people around you that are well connected to something of a higher power, which has programmed them not to turn into a cannibal after 2 or 3 days of the lights going out, not to murder and steal and kill when things get a little bit rough, that it's going to be very, very hard times. So without God, without having a well of fortitude to draw from, without having something very, very, very solid to anchor your constitution of character into solidly, when that tidal wave comes of chaos, the world will overtake you. There's no amount of bullets you can have, or no amount of chariots you can have, once every single person in the world, or in the country even, goes nuts trying to take what you have stored and prepared for your family. That's the number one logistical gap people have in their readiness plans. People store weapons, they store food, they store water, they store batteries, but they don't surround themselves, and they don't ensure the quality of their community. That's your number one threat. People are only a couple meals away from murdering you to feed their family. And if you're not prepared, you are only a couple meals away from murdering other people unless you are grounded in something higher. Here's what's going to happen. We live in Disneyland, we live in the United States. It's very easy for people to become careless. Now, the mothers of this country who have raised their sons and daughters need to be very careful in exactly how they're raising those kids, because that's who's programming the children. The mothers and the father, the parents collectively, hopefully, but the mother's the head of the house. And if you get careless in that role and effectively programming your children and understanding the value of keeping a very, very intimate relationship with that higher source of power and strength, that the second it goes bad, all of society goes nuts. And even if you are that one lone person standing out in the middle of everyone else who's going nuts, they'll cannibalize you. I'm basically reading from Isaiah 31 and 32, by the way. If you want to look up the story in its older context. But this is a warning for our day and time. If you read chapter 32, the warning goes as follows. If we become careless in the raising of our children, and we lose sight of that greater reality, which is that God is our strength, not just our military prowess and our might and our economy and our great king. If we don't have a better king, the one that is above, all that wealth that we acquired, all the decorations we put in our living room, our house, all the stuff we bought from Home Depot or Bed Bath & Beyond is going to be gone very quickly. The birds will feast on our flesh. They will feast upon our innards and other parts which I will not mention. You can read the Bible if you want the full story. And there'll be thorn bushes growing out of the windows of our houses. Trees will be growing in your living room. And there will be no humans left in the city. Everyone will be eaten by the animals after they kill each other or die or starve or run out of their medication or whatever the case may be. And that won't take long. That'll take, I'd say, a couple months for most people. And then within 2 years, you'll have a 90% casualty rate in the United States. And the last remaining 10% will either be like Mad Max bad guys or Mad Max good guys. Okay? So that's what we have to look forward to if we don't get real serious, real quick, about repenting of our silly ways and being careless, being lost in today's wealth, being lost in today's comforts, and not thinking ahead and not prioritizing our spiritual strength, which is a muscle that needs to be exercised ahead of time. You can't just expect all of a sudden have that happen after it goes panic. If the people nowadays, when everything's hunky-dory and perfect, are a bunch of turkeys and a bunch of jerks, how do you think they're going to be after 3 or 4 days without food, with screaming kids who are starving to death and have no water and are starting to get sick because they're drinking out of the river, and they're looking for food, and they got a shotgun or they got a knife, and they'll wait for you to come out of your farmhouse or your house at home. If they know you got something, they'll lay in the bushes and wait at night until you come out to tend your garden, and they'll shoot you and they'll murder you, and they'll have their way with your family, and they'll take all your stuff and sit in your house and eat all your stored food or whatever you got, because you weren't surrounded by a community of people with their heads screwed on straight, until the next goofball comes along and murders that person, and the cycle continues. Okay? There's about to be a big separation of wheat and chaff here. I'm sure you guys understand that. If you're watching this video the way I'm going to title it, I'm sure you got an idea. The biggest gap in your logistical readiness plans is a sound, God-fearing community.